the sickness that all of this is just, I think Republicans are partly to blame because we have allowed, as a party, we have allowed the Democrats to kind of go further and further down this rabbit hole, and we've sort of not been hand in hand with them, but followed along not too far behind.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute, someone has to say, no, we're not going to put up with that anymore. And so I sort of see that as what the new role of the Republican Party is like, we're going to stand up for what is good, right, true, and beautiful.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome back to the For Liberty and Justice podcast, where we seek to mobilize the church, wake up the city, and take a stand for liberty and justice in the governmental realm. I'm so excited today. I have a special guest, a close friend of mine, also an absolute leader in Texas politics. He is our Tarrant County chairman, which is the county that I live in, for the GOP. And we have Bo French with us today. Welcome. Thanks for being with us, man.
Nate, I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's going to be a good discussion. I know we're going to kind of hit on a few topics today. Everything from this last election cycle in Tarrant County that was so historic, and really Texas and nationwide. You've been at Mar-a-Lago as of recently, yeah, it's pretty awesome. And it's just been really cool to see how you've been so heavily engaged and involved in what I believe to be the future of our party. The Republican Party is, in my opinion, moving in the right direction towards a more conservative populist movement rather than the old, neocon type of culture, high level spending, putting our great grandchildren in debt, all those things. And so I'm excited. And you're really a leader in that. And so it's been an honor to have you as our county chairman for the GOP and to watch all you've done in Tarrant County. But I want to talk about a little bit of that. I also want to talk about this speaker's race in the Texas House. And I'm a member of the legislature, and I've obviously am voting for David Cook for Speaker of the Texas House because he's the reform candidate. No more business as usual, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But tell us about your time as Tarrant County chairman for the GOP so far. Tell us about stuff that y'all have accomplished and really the vision of where you want to see the party go.
Yeah, so, nice intro. Thank you.
Yeah.
I kind of have the benefit of when I was elected as the chairman, I really hadn't been involved in the party politics. So I really actually had no idea what the job description was, what I was supposed to do.
You'd have never done it if you did.
And there were people that were like, you really don't want to do this. I saw a need. And because I didn't really know what I was supposed to do, I just said, well, I'm going to do what I think I ought to do. And so that makes every decision really easy. Just do what's right.
Yeah.
And, I think I give credit to Donald Trump, quite frankly, because he, if you've heard me talk about my political history before, talk about, my coming up, during Reagan's years and then, Rush Limbaugh and all of those things. But you look at what Donald Trump did starting in 2016, and he really has changed the party. And I think in a lot of ways, it's changed it for the better because it's unshackled us from a past that really had us playing by rules that were causing us to lose.
Yeah.
The left just has continued to take ground in everything. Just, in my opinion, they have made huge inroads in destroying every institution that we know to be, I say this all the time, good, right, true, and beautiful.
Yeah.
And so that, for me, that's just kind of my guiding, principles in what I seek to do in office. And the other thing, too, is when I vote for people, I have expectations of how I want them to behave in office and what I want them to do and what I want them to stand for. And so it makes it real easy. I'm just going to do the same thing, have that same expectation for myself.
Yeah.
And, I know that I can't make everybody happy, so I'm not worried about who I make happy. I just do what's right, and the right people will be happy about that. And that's all that matters.
That's beautifully said. And I think ultimately it's really what every elected official needs to adopt as their own personal philosophy. The problem is, and you've seen this, and we could go down the list of why politicians go corrupt. In fact, you've been around, in Tarrant County politics for a while now to even see, and state politics as well, and especially on the federal level. I think the federal level is just more highlighted because of the media. But I would say it's the transition from people who run initially for the right reason to becoming the absolute horrific reason that people hate politics is very quick. It typically happens within the first session if they serve or the first term that they serve, whether that's county level, city level, state level, federal level, it doesn't really matter. But what happens is, and it's this intimidation factor that I've seen that members of, I can only speak to the only elected position I've ever held, which is state rep, and it's only been for one term. But in that term, watching people come in and learn immediately, whether it's freshman orientation, whether it's, their first few weeks in office, I don't get to grow my name unless I play by the rules of the powers that be.
Yeah.
So rather than amplifying the voices of the people that place them there, they bury those and they start to amplify the voices that they think are the most politically advantageous. And so I've watched you do the opposite in Tarrant County. You have done nothing from my perspective except for amplify the voice of the grassroots and amplify the voice of the people that trusted you to run in this position, whether that's through fundraising, whether that's through bringing in voices that are going to amplify Tarrant County and make sure that Tarrant County is leading the way for conservative policy, whether that's helping people like me who need the help of making sure that grassroots conservatives like myself can go forward and actually win elections. You've done an excellent job. I want you to speak to a little bit, but before you do, I want to just say for anyone watching, the need for true leaders and business leaders like yourself, because that's your background is in business leaders to step up and say, hey, I'm going to take on a volunteer position like county chair for the GOP. I mean, that's volunteer. For those who don't know, it's a volunteer position. You oversee the grassroots efforts as well as fundraising for the county, Republican Party. You don't get paid for it. It's an act of service. There is unbelievable negatives as far as, everyone has an opinion on how you're supposed to do your job.
Part-time.
Yeah, part-time. But I've watched you do it with such excellence. For those watching, I really believe that it is one of the unsung hero roles if we want the GOP to continue to grow for our next generation, for those who are business leaders and leaders in the community to step up and say, all right, if I want the GOP to reflect my Christian conservative values, then I've got to get in there and do the work. And you've done that. So talk to me about some of the victories that you've seen in Tarrant County since you've taken over, whether it be fundraising, winning elections, or amplifying voices. What would you say? What's the secret sauce? And what are you most proud of that's been done in Tarrant County?
Well, there's no secret sauce. As you know, anytime you campaign, it's hard. Mm-hmm. And, you were talking earlier about, state reps that get into session and, within one session, they're not living up to the campaign promises they made the first time around. And I think a lot of that is, fundraising is difficult.
Yeah.
And knocking on lots of doors is difficult. And all the things that you have to do should do when you're running for office. And so I understand, I'm not saying I condone it, but I do understand why people get pulled away from their conservative principles once they get in office. Because why do the hard work when you can just push the easy button?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people get sucked into that. And, I think from everything I've been hearing, the years I've been paying attention to the state legislature, it's, if you just will take this one vote, I know this isn't exactly what you campaigned on, but we're going to protect you. We're going to shield you. We'll help you fundraise. And, when you've had to make thousands of calls on doors.
Yeah.
When you've had to make thousands of phone calls and ask people for money, when you've had to do all those things, you're like, wait, I'm not going to have to do that again.
Yeah.
Because these people are just going to make sure I have
special interest in the lobby are just going to make it happen.
That seems like maybe, but I'm still a conservative. I can still do this.
Yeah.
So that's enough about, my philosophy there. But Tarrant County, so it's just barely over a year that I was elected.
That's bizarre to think about. It does not feel that way.
I know. It actually feels like a long time.
Yeah.
Because this part-time thing took, I came in right ahead of, immediately we had an EC meeting, and then,
It's an executive committee meeting if you don't know.
And then like a couple of weeks later, we had filing season. So we had to accept all the applications for the people who want. And we're in, Tarrant County is a big county. We're about 2.5 million people.
Yep.
It's the same size as Dallas County. And
a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah.
That's like an unsaid thing. And I think Dallas, everyone thinks is big. Tarrant is there.
Yeah. We're essentially the same size. It's, maybe give or take 10 or 50,000 people, but in 2.5 million people, we're just about the same size. And so we have a lot of volunteers here, a lot of grassroots people here. But we also have a lot of, as you can imagine, people who are kind of the older mindset about how Republicans ought to be, and have this, ideal in their head. And, I look at this like we have graduated from the traditional battles of Republican versus Democrat. Yep. And we are in a situation where, the other side has taken on, I say this a lot, but it's literally is good versus evil. And I mean evil in the spiritual sense, because they have taken on positions that are 10 years ago. If you had said this was going to be the position, even people in the Democrat Party would have been like, no way we would ever say that. They're trying to justify minor attracted persons, pedophilia. They're trying to justify gay pornography in kids' schools. Yep. They're trying to justify mutilating children, permanently mutilating children. Yep. It's just the sickness that all of this is just, I think Republicans are partly to blame, because we have allowed, as a party, we have allowed the Democrats to kind of go further and further down this rabbit hole, and we've sort of not been hand in hand with them, but followed along not too far behind. Yeah. And it's like, wait a minute, someone has to say, no, we're not going to put up with that anymore. And so I sort of see that as what the new role of the Republican Party is like, we're going to stand up for what is good, right, true, and beautiful. Yeah. So in Tarrant County, I came in to a county party that didn't really have any money, sort of the post-COVID, not a whole lot happened. Sort of the post-2020 Donald Trump loss, being a Republican was, frowned upon by any public position. And
statistically, I've been told by everyone at this point that Tarrant County is trending purple and maybe even blue.
Well, so that is the thing. In 2020, Tarrant County actually did slightly vote for Joe Biden. Yeah. And so that, you could say a lot of things about 2020, but if you just look at how down ballot races did and things like that, it's still a red county. I still claim it as a red county because all of our countywide officials are Republicans. Yep. And so I saw this as an opportunity. If the trend continues, though, and the top of the ticket is turning blue, and that's slowly moving down the ballot, we're going to be in real trouble, and we're going to end up like these other counties that are run by Democrats. And of course, my position is once Democrats control the voting and the counting, Republicans never win again. Yeah. And so I wanted to head that off. This is where I live. I think it's an important county if you look at the landscape of Texas. Yep. Tarrant County is an important county. We're the largest urban county that's still Republican in the nation. And so I just felt like there was a lot of opportunity here to, if we right the ship here, we can kind of have the playbook on how we could then go and save some of these other cities. Allen West is working hard over in Dallas. Yeah. Dallas is a very, very blue county. Yep. But, if we do a few things right, there is an opportunity for someone like an Allen West in Dallas to reverse the course over there. Houston, Harris County is mostly a blue county now. Yeah. But, it's not too far off. I think there's still the possibility we could save Harris County. And then you get to these like growing.
Travis is gone.
Yeah. Well, Travis has been gone for 150 years. Yeah.
And it's interesting that you say that. I watched you raise this an insane amount of money to what I believe is doubly difficult, because I believe that a lot of donors have not felt, especially with the Ronas of the world over the RNC, have not had a lot of confidence that the money going towards the Republican Party is going to be stewarded well. And I watched you steward it well. And so I was just so impressed. I was so impressed watching you raise money. A lot of people, especially believers that are watching right now, we as Christians, fundraising is not top of mind for us. That's not what we're thinking. We're thinking we got to do the right thing for ideological reasons. And the reality is you can't win races without money. And so you putting that on the forefront for people and just being like, look, we can speak the truth all day long. If no one's writing the checks, then it's going to be difficult for our messaging to get out. And so you spoke to that very well, but I was so proud watching in 2024 in this election in November, not only did we win all of our countywide officials, but we trended to the right significantly. And obviously Donald Trump won Tarrant County, which was just huge. I mean, it was just huge. The gap that we covered was so beautiful. And that's a true testament to your leadership with grassroots campaigning. There wasn't a weekend where I didn't see you at a block walk kickoff or a block. I mean, you were just everywhere, the amount of doors. I don't even know. Do you know how many doors were knocked?
I think we knocked about 80,000 doors.
It's insane. Yeah. 80,000 doors knocked. Not only that, but for every single polling site to have representation with election judges. We were proud to contribute to the efforts on voting day, but I mean, they were there for early voting, for all of it. To have the security of knowing we have secure elections, it was awesome. And so that brings us to today. Your leadership has been evident. You've pushed this party in the correct direction. I love some of your predecessors. I think they're awesome. I just saw a new level of true ground game. I mean, we were just in the fight, which brings us to this idea that I believe Texas leads the way for America. As goes Texas, goes the nation. I've always believed that. And we have what I believe to be a mandate from America for the way that landslide victory for Donald Trump.
Well, that should be clear to everybody.
Yes.
That we have a mandate.
Well, and that's so crazy that's even debated. But we have this mandate for America. And then in the process of it, my personal stance is we needed to get rid of our current speaker, Dade Phelan, because Dade has operated among the Democrats all day long. I could go all day about that, but just to list a few things, he allowed our top border security bill to die. With the largest invasion of illegal aliens we've ever seen coming into Texas, he allowed that to die on the House floor. There were only 4 members of the legislature that were willing to sign onto a challenging of the ruling of chair with me. And so we couldn't even challenge it because you needed 10. We didn't have 10 brave souls in the Texas legislature. And I love my colleagues. We've made up. We have said it's water under the bridge, but I'll never let it be forgotten that we didn't have 10 people that would sign that to challenge our speaker.
That's a testament to leadership.
It is. Yeah. And it's downstream because it was the fear that if I sign that paper, I'm never going to be able to pass the local legislation that my county is depending on. And so there's that hiring as our parliamentarian, a former White House Obama lawyer who is a gay rights activist, by the way, in Travis County, to be our parliamentarian and who's been relegated to calling balls and strikes for the legislature, not even his job. And so we've got that. We've got appointing Democrat committee chairs. We have far left social Marxists that are chairing important committees. We have people
in a Republican majority house.
In a Republican majority house, not even a small majority. That's
so infuriating to everybody.
By the way, no other body in America allows the minority party to chair committees inside of their legislature. So anyway, those are a few things. So which brings us to today. You've helped lead the charge of Tarrant County being more red, which I think as a philosophy, and it's important for believers to remember this, that the common misconception of state politics and federal is that, you got to go down the middle so we get we cast a wide net. When reality is, no, we got to push far to the right so that even our furthest left friends are forced to move, it's the Overton window, over into more of the region of faith, family, and freedom. And you've done that. Well, we felt the same way about the legislature. And so 48 of us members decided there's no more business as usual. We need a champion that's going to reform the Texas House. So not only did we write the contract with Texas among about 24, 25 of us, which lays out reforms, but we also gathered 48 like-minded individuals in the state legislature just to simply say, who do we believe can take us into a better future in Texas where we're honoring the mandates that America gives us, like electing Donald Trump. That person was David Cook. Lo and behold, here we find Dustin Burrows, who was the chair of calendars under Dade Phelan, who probably ideologically coming into the legislature had conservative ideals, that now we see he's just as responsible for all of the stuff with Dade Phelan. They jumped into the race after we had coalesced behind David Cook so that they can keep the regime alive. We meet as a Republican caucus. Republican caucus bylaws, for those of you who don't know, demands that we choose a speaker candidate in a caucus, into the Republican caucus. Need a 3/5 vote to choose that. He will be the GOP caucus endorsed candidate. And then our bylaws state that we must go to the floor and vote for that GOP caucus endorsed candidate. Now, a couple sessions ago, my predecessor helped lead the charge on this to make sure that you're choosing in the Republican caucus who your speaker will be. That way a Democrat doesn't even have the chance to get the votes on the floor. Well, here we are just a couple weeks ago. All of a sudden, David Cook's there. He has the majority of the votes. We don't hit 3/5 yet. We're going into the third round, which is where you need 3/5. And about that time, Dustin Burrows realizes he can't get the votes in caucus. He gets up, leaves caucus. About 25 of his buddies follow him. They go make a deal with the Democrats and then hold a press conference to say, we have the votes. We've made a deal with the Democrats in order to win the speakership in the Texas House. This is, and that was a really quick summary, but it brings us to what you've done. This is a total betrayal of our values, a betrayal of the mandate of Donald J. Trump, a betrayal of our statewide elected officials that are trying to push forward a conservative agenda. It's a betrayal of those who want school choice for the money to follow the student. It's a betrayal for those who want us to secure the border. It's a betrayal who want to put us on a path to eliminate property taxes. It's a betrayal for all of our Texas GOP priorities. Do you really think the Democrat-controlled House is going to pass a ban on China owning Texas land? Of course they're not. It's a betrayal of all those values. And yet, we have some Republicans that are choosing to stay silent. Talk to me, and I'm sorry for that long intro, but talk to me about what you've done as a county party chairman, why it's important, and the momentum.
Well, but this is the kind of thing that just really ticks people off, right? I mean, betrayal is such a great word because, I mean, imagine Donald Trump. I mean, in 2020 or 2021, if you had said Donald Trump was going to win in 2024, people were like, what are you talking about? Like, he just lost. The country is moving on. Yeah. And, the adults are back in charge. Donald Trump won in historic fashion because Republicans and, frankly, a bunch of people who are not Republicans said, we have had enough with the craziness and we want common sense. And so Republicans here in Texas are no different. I mean, we're part of that. And when you look at something as simple as who is going to control the large majority Republican Texas House, and you have a small subset of Republicans, and this has been going on for 15 years, but when you have a small subset of Republicans saying, no, we're not going to partner up with our Republican colleagues, we're going to partner up with the Democrats. And then, just history shows that they've used that as a platform to kill most of our Republican priorities every session, or significantly water down, every good bill. Those fights are legendary. But people, just the average people, are so fed up with this kind of nonsense. And so I thought, well, shoot, I'm going to write a letter. It was a pretty good letter. And I thought, I'm going to just send this around to a couple other county chairs and see if I can get them to sign on. And so it literally just started that way. And every person I showed it to was like, I'll sign my name to that. I'll sign my name to that. Well, to date, I now have 123 county chairs in Texas.
Counting.
Yeah, and counting. Like they're still coming in. I will tell you this. Here's what's really funny.
And that, just for everyone watching that maybe is not from Texas, we have 254 counties in Texas. And how many did you say have signed on so far?
123, but it's all the big counties.
Wow.
It's all the major counties. Now we have lots of counties that, have 5,000 people in them or something like that. And, if you're Joe, who's a cotton farmer, and you're the GOP county chair in a 5,000 person county, you might not check your email every day. It might not be a priority. So I know for a fact that like 100 of these people haven't even opened the email that I sent them yet. Because, I can see that. So I feel confident that by, as we get through the holidays, those numbers are going to continue to go up. And I've only had, I think there's been 6 counties who have said that they would not sign it. And it's clear why. These are the type of Republicans that are in counties where Dustin Burrows and some of these Republicans are, and they don't want to sign on because for fear of, in Tarrant
retribution.
County, in Tarrant County, we have 11 state reps.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's me versus 11 state reps. Am I ideologically aligned with all 11? No, of course not. But in some of these counties, you're the county chair and you've got a state rep who actually is the state rep for 15 counties.
Yeah.
And so that state rep is actually remarkably more powerful in his community than the state rep is in this community, right? And so
and kind of tell us what the letter entails. Like, why is it even controversial? What's said in the letter?
Well, just in a nutshell, we have Republican Party rules. We have caucus rules. The Republicans duly selected David Cook to be the Speaker of the House, to be their nominee for the Speaker vote in January. And Dustin Burrows, defected with Democrats and he's made promises that certain Democrats were with him who weren't. He's made promises that certain Republicans are with him who are not.
Yep.
And so it's like, wait a minute, he's not even being honest about the support he claims to have. And so I think it's just obvious. Everybody who is of kind of the MAGA type, let's fix what's broken with our government that's been going on for a while type of reformer, as we've called them. All of those people are on the same team you're on, supporting David Cook.
It's huge. And I think, what's important to note here is that I believe David's a great man. He's a good friend of mine. Me and David don't agree on everything. There are things that I was with him earlier today, and I think that's what's so beautiful is me and David have been able to disagree on policy, and yet he has the respect to say, hey, if the grassroots want it, we're going to do it. And I'm going to honor getting all of our Texas GOP priorities passed. And I think, so here's the deal. I think it's important to know if you're watching in Texas, and the reason that this is important for you to watch even if you're not in Texas, is the grassroots. And when we say grassroots, what we really mean is those that are on the ground doing the work in our communities that share conservative Christian values, whether that's church members, pastors, business leaders, precinct chairs, those that are in tune enough with policy to understand who and why they're voting for them and share our conservative values to make America great again. And so that's who we're talking about. One of the reasons that David Cook is so important here is I wouldn't say that David Cook is the loudest person in the room. I think David Cook gets along with pretty much everybody. I think David Cook is clearly a conservative, clearly a Republican. But the reality is David Cook's not a bomb thrower. This isn't someone who has been at the back mic calling points of order next to Tony Tinderholt, who's a close friend of mine, and we desperately need in the Texas House because he holds our Republicans accountable. But he's not that guy. He's not the guy who's, getting in the dog fights with us on, the minute little details of our banning DEI in public universities and making sure we're not giving lifelong tenure to, social Marxists, which we did, by the way, in the state of Texas. But what he's had is he came to us with a contract with Texas, which is 12 points on how to reform Texas government. And, they anywhere from removing the current parliamentarian because he's a social Marxist, to making sure that our calendars committee is more transparent and we're not killing conservative legislation, all the way to banning Democrat committee chairs. What a novel concept that apparently all other 49 states have figured out, that you don't give the minority chairmanships, down into making sure that the speaker is term limited. He signed his own term limit. He just pretty much said, I'm in for reform. And here's what is most important. There is a culture, and probably in more state legislatures than Texas, but there's a culture of bullying that goes on. Not like someone can physically overpower you, but in a essence of manipulation that says, if you ever buck leadership, you will never get anything done inside this Texas legislature. The problem with that is they're simultaneously telling Democrats, you can say whatever you want on the mic, you can throw as many point of orders you want, we're going to make sure that your bills get passed. In fact, which leads me to that's why David Cook's a good guy for this position. Here's why Dustin Burrows is not. Dustin Burrows, under Dade Phelan, was one of the lead bullies against conservatives. What I mean by that is he's chair of calendars, arguably the most important committee, I would say, only measured up to, appropriations and state affairs. But even then, calendars determines what gets to the floor, meaning this: although our 8 GOP priorities did not pass under Dustin Burrows' leadership in the calendars committee, 500 Democrat priority bills passed last session that had to be approved by Dustin Burrows himself. Now, in the process, I watched him kill major pieces of legislation of mine. I watched him let the China land ban for Texas land die on the House floor. I watched him never even allow a ban on taxpayer-funded lobbying to get to the House floor. I watched him rig a calendar to make sure that detransitioners that regretted mutilating their own body could not get medical care to do so. I watched him take a stand against a few of our Texas GOP priorities, including not even letting closing our primaries be on the state calendar. And this is a person who is now coming to the table and saying, guys, I'm the reform candidate.
you know what's telling to me? What's so telling is if it were Tony Tinderholt running or you running for speaker, right? Okay, like one of the far right, very conservative members, I could understand why the most liberal members would be like, maybe we don't really want them. We should go team up with the Democrats.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, that would kind of make sense. I wouldn't agree with it, but it would at least make sense.
It's expected.
This doesn't make sense because David Cook is not one of those.
No.
He is a very middle of the road,
pragmatic,
just good guy. Has a track record of success, through city politics and knows how to get things done. Yeah, pragmatic is a great word. But he's not the far right bomb thrower.
No.
And they are still wanting to team up with Democrats because it appears to me, they just don't actually want any of the Republican priorities to pass.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I think it's very telling because what you're saying is true. If we chose David Cook because we also understand the realities of our chamber, and you know this to be true. I mean, you're on the forefront of the battle. And when people call themselves a Republican, I don't even know what that means anymore. Now, I want it to mean something, which is why we haven't given up on the Republican Party, but we're reforming it. I believe in the Republican name. I am a Republican. But sadly, people who have come before us in the party and people that are still in there, they've watered down the name Republican to mean very little in some circles. And so when I was looking at, who do I trust to lead us into battle, David wasn't our only option. But also, the speaker is not someone that I want to call all the shots. So I think this is an important point to make. For those watching this speaker battle, and you're like, well, why didn't Tony Tinderholt run for speaker? Well, he did last time, and I was one of 3 who voted for him.
He got 3 votes.
He got 3 votes, which is 3 more than the other members. But hey, I was proud to be one of the 3, and I've told Tony over and over that it's the best vote I've ever taken. So, but there was only 3. Why is that? Well, it's because exactly what you said. I think people are like, well, we're on the extreme right. And it's like extreme right really just means that we want to be honest. But all that said, I get it. Like they want to expand Medicaid. We don't. They want to give incentives for woke companies in Texas. We don't. They want to grow government by 20% in funding. We don't. So it's like, they want to give, broadband access to all of rural Texas. And I'm very well aware that Elon Musk is going to make that not necessary in the next 5 years. We don't. So I get it. But now we have David Cook. And the reason that David is such a good option is because I believe that David has a few qualities that would make him a great leader. Number one, he's honest. If David doesn't agree with me on something, he tells me flat out to my face and then sticks to it. And if the facts are in place and I can prove it to him, there have been times where David's been like, oh, you're right. I was wrong. I'll come to your side. And to his credit, he's also shifted my focus on a few different issues so that I can understand them as well. But the reality is that David's going to make a great leader in that speaker position because he's honest. Dustin Burrows has lied over and over and over again, even down to, it was 2019, I believe, a video was released. And that video was Dustin Burrows explaining, hey guys, we got to be careful because we have to honor the Texas GOP caucus rules because there might be some liberal Republican one day that comes into the caucus, and when he realizes he can't maintain power, he's going to go make a dirty deal with the Democrats, and all of a sudden we're going to have a Democrat-led chamber. The irony is he is the guy who just did that. So there's lie number one. Lie number two was that he said, I'm for the grassroots and passing our GOP priorities. Well, Dustin, out of your calendars committee, we didn't get to him. Lie number three, he comes out the other day after making a deal with the Democrats and says, I have 76 names. Immediately, 6 Republicans raise their hand and say, I shouldn't be on this list. I'm voting for David Cook. And there's even Democrats that are saying that he didn't. He lied to manipulate people into getting him in the speakership. We're talking about a man who's not an honest broker. We're talking about a man who will make a deal to be in power. And the danger of putting someone like that inside a position of speaker is that the number one thing to reform the Texas House, to make the body actually do the will of the people, is not to have a dictator in that role, but to have someone who relinquishes power. And so when you look at this, why is it so dangerous from your perspective for us to allow, I'm going to give my answer on this. The number one reasons why we can't allow Dustin Burrows to become the Speaker of the Texas House, what would you say?
Well, I mean, I think you've spelled it out. It's that he's been dishonest. I've talked to some of the members who were part of that 6.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, he came to us and said that he had all the votes.
Yeah.
And so, of course, some of these people are not super, we don't really want to take a stand. We just kind of want to go along to get along because, we want a good committee assignment or whatever the case may be. And so it's like, oh, well, if you have the votes, then yeah, I'll support you. But then when it came out that he didn't really have the votes, people were like, whoa, I never said that I was for sure on his team. I just said that just like when the Tony Tinderholt thing happened, there were people who probably would have voted for someone other than Dade Phelan at the time. But I mean, when it was clear that it was going to be Dade Phelan, it was like, well, now if you vote against him, you're making sure that you're not getting a good committee assignment.
Yeah, and let me spell that out before you go any further, because I think it's important to understand the pressures within the chamber. The things that were threatened to me when I voted for Tony, well, number one, they're null and void. It's been the greatest vote I've taken. It's aged very well, like fine wine. But the threats that were given to me is not only are you going to get terrible committee assignments, you'll never pass a bill. In your name is what they meant, by the way. There are other ways to pass a bill than have your name on top of it. You're going to be hated in the chamber. This has been said to me. This is a fraternity. You get each other's backs first, and then you worry about back home.
Imagine that when you're like representing people.
Geez, 200,000 in Texas. And I'm like, to which I laughed. At that point, I was laughing. I've been told, don't rock the boat. If you rock the boat, you're going to make a lot of Democrats mad, and they might not like you. Like, these are the things that are being said to you. But the threats come in where they start saying, hey, if you vote against the speaker, you are going to be completely ineffective. And the threat is, if you're ineffective, they try to get you to believe that the word ineffective means you don't get to pass bills in your name and which you will get beat in your next election cycle. But the reality is quite the opposite. If you're constantly bending a knee to leadership and you're nothing but their shill, then you're probably going to lose your next primary because you didn't actually do the will of the people. And so please go on. I just had to spell that out of some of the threats that we receive as members.
Yeah. And I mean, look, if you just look at what has happened for the last 15 years, that will continue under a Dustin Burrows speakership. I mean, he's teaming up with the Democrats.
Yep.
He's going to have to make concessions to them. He's going to give them power. Well, if you in a massive majority Republican body, if you give Democrats power, you are immediately weakening your body.
Yep.
From the Republican standpoint. Why vote in Republicans if they're just going to give away power to Democrats to then kill all the Republican priorities? So, I mean, for me, it's just, look, elected officials need to do what's right and stand up for what's right. And the consequences, like you said, you were threatened and told that if you voted for Tony Tinderholt, all these bad things would happen. And some of those bad things did happen.
Sure.
But it actually gave you credibility as someone who's, hey, I'm going to stand up and do what's right. And I'm going to fight for what's right. And you're rewarded for that. Yes. You're actually rewarded for doing the right thing. It's like when, what was the Hollywood story? Oh, Mel Gibson, when he was, wanting to do like Passion of the Christ or whatever it was. And everyone's like, no one's ever going to buy that. And Christians are like, no, actually, we're going to buy it. We're going to go see that. And, it was hugely successful. So, when you do what's right, you may not see it ahead of time, but there is reward there. And so, my encouragement to these elected officials is just do what's right. Do what is right. Quit worrying about playing politics. Quit worrying about buttering up to this guy. Look, political battles, I ran in a primary against someone. He's still a friend.
Yeah.
Totally. It is just a political battle that you can get over. And just like you said with David Cook, like you may not have, there have been times when you haven't agreed with him on everything, but you still get along, you still work together because that's what you do. It's not personal. These are not personal issues. It is, I'm here to do what is right. And just unfortunately not enough people have that perspective. But I think that the tide's turning. We successfully replaced 15 or so of these types of people.
Dade Phelan is not the speaker as of January 14th.
Yeah, that's right.
We got a sitting speaker to take himself out of the race because of the political pressure.
Yeah.
And that was really in part of the grassroots. I mean, I can't thank the people of Texas enough that are involved in the party, that are just patriots that have stood up, whether that be social media, giving, whatever it is, that have just said, we will take this no longer. I want to get into the meat of why this battle is worth fighting for. And it goes down into, I believe that there are three types of elected officials. There are evil elected officials. There are righteous fighters that are elected officials. And then there are the vast majority, which is completely ineffective. And those completely ineffective, to me, are worse than the evil. And the reason I say that, those are the people that are lukewarm. Scripture says it best, that he'll spit you out if you're lukewarm. Why? Because at least the evil are operating off of conviction. And the righteous, and by righteous, I do not mean perfect. We're a very flawed group of people who are fighting the good fight. But we're based off of ideology and conviction for our Christian conservative values. But I think what happens is, and we've heard this concept from, Luke Macias and others for years about this Overton window. And I think the reason that it's so important to do the right thing when it's unpopular is because eventually the right thing will become the popular thing. And I think you've taken a hold of that really well in Tarrant County when people have said, hey, don't rock the boat. And you're like, well, if I don't rock the boat, then the boat's going to be 6 feet underwater. We're losing the boat. And so it's this idea, and we need to make the paradigm shift here, that in order to move our movement in the right direction, you do have to go to the furthest extreme of your viewpoint. And there are those that will never get the credit for the things that actually pass in the legislature. But the only reason that passed in the legislature was because they were over here shouting loud enough to where the moderate middle had to move over there in that direction.
And being attacked the whole way, right?
And
not just attacked from, I've had people come up to me saying, I'm just so worried about if you do that or you say that, what are the Democrats going to say? And I just laugh of like, I don't care what the Democrats are going to say, because they're going to say a bunch of evil nonsense anyway. So I don't really care about that.
Yeah.
But even people in our own party, are like, ooh, that's too much. You can't do that. And, the Republican Party forever, I think, probably to its success and to its detriment, kind of focused on economic issues, low taxes, low regulation, and those are good things.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
But there's become this focus in this wing of the party that's kind of the only thing that they seem to care about. And they're like, ooh, we don't want to touch social issues because those are too controversial. But by not doing that, the left is just, like I said at the beginning, is just continue to take ground and take ground and take ground. And so now we're in a situation where we're like, whoa, we have to, as Republicans, we have to fight on all of these fronts.
Yes.
Right. And not just the economic issues. We have to confront the family issues and the social issues because we are literally losing our society, and our kids and our grandkids are in big trouble if we don't turn the ship around now. So, I just view that this is like, this is the fight of our lifetime. And, like I said, if you're in office, you've just got to do what's right. And, the consequences are the consequences. You're either going to win or lose that next election. And who cares?
Yeah.
Do what's right. You've got to go to bed at night.
That's right.
I don't know how some of these people,
No, me neither.
sleep at night.
And just for the sake of the timeline here, what we're looking at is in the course of 2 years. I don't by any means claim to be the any type of savior of Texas. But one of the, it was easy for me, but one of the more controversial votes I ever took was to vote against Dade Phelan on the House floor. And I think it's important for people to know why I did that. It wasn't this vindictive move. The reality is he did spend hundreds of thousands of dollars against me in my primary. But that's kind of water under the bridge when you get in. I mean, at the end of the day, you're in. You got to work with people. All the way the 7 months leading up to me being sworn in, Dade wouldn't even give me a call. I mean, I had his chief of staff's number because he had reached out and said something trivial about freshman orientation. And I was just like, hey, I would love to meet with the speaker. And I was pushed off, all the way up until the night before the vote, where I met Dade at some, freshman orientation party. And he was cordial, nice, would not meet with me. And for me, if I am not going to cast a vote for someone who doesn't have time to answer my questions. I didn't vote for him for a few different reasons. So I think it's important, and it's important for the record to show why I broke caucus rules in order to vote for Tony Tinderholt over Dade, because some people have accused me of saying, well, you broke caucus rules too. Well, here's the deal. In rule, I believe it's 233, and I'll have to go back and look. In the plank, it says that you shall not elect a speaker who's going to appoint Democrat committee chairs. So we were stuck in a rock and a hard place last time, where it's like, okay, you can either follow the caucus rules and vote for Dade Phelan because he had the majority of Republicans, or you can follow the plank for the GOP platform and vote against him. And so I'm like, well, at this point, I'm going to choose the more conservative option. This time, we have someone who won the caucus, who is literally following every plank in the GOP platform. He is going by the book. And yet we have Republicans that are willing to stab our voters in the back in order to vote for him. And the reason that this is so important is the timeline. The numbers are important. Up until the caucus vote just a couple weeks ago, we had 48 members that were willing to stand with David Cook and say, I support David Cook and I'm endorsing him. There are 88 members in our Republican caucus. So out of the 88, we had 48. And that doesn't mean Dustin had 40. It just means we had 40 that were uncommitted. Going into the caucus meeting, we maintained that number in the first couple of votes cast. Maybe we lost a vote or two. And then what happened is that when we took the final vote after they had left in protest to make a deal with the Democrats, well, not only did he win the caucus, that number has grown to 62 Republicans. Why is that important? Because right now, over 60 Republicans out of our 88 are voting for David Cook, which means only a minority of Republicans are standing with Dustin Burrows and the majority of the Democrat caucus. That's important because that is going to come down to who you won your election from is who you're going to serve while you're serving.
Yeah, well, the choice is David Cook is the Republican choice.
Yeah.
And Dustin Burrows is the Democrat choice.
Yeah.
So that tells you everything if you're a voter out there and you're trying to figure out, who's really right in this.
What policies are you most concerned about dying on the House floor under Dustin Burrows' leadership? Like what if you had to say, man, I'm most concerned that this is not even going to get to the floor because of the deal that he made. Because the reality is we don't know what that conversation was. We actually don't know what the deal is he made with the Democrats. We only know that it included maintaining the practice of empowering social Marxists to be Democrat committee chairs.
I mean, look, there's so much like DEI and woke nonsense going on. There's the border, there's the talk of property tax, there's school choice. I mean, it could be any number of these issues that are important to me. Which one am I most afraid of? Look, the Democrats are against us on everything.
Yeah.
So no matter what his deal is, he's going to concede some of those to the Democrats.
Yes.
Which just means, we have an 88 seat majority in the Texas House out of 150. So do the math.
Yep. 62 Dems.
Yeah. We should get everything as Republicans passed that we want passed.
Yes.
The Senate doesn't have a problem.
I know.
But the House, has had a problem for 15 years.
So
and Texas has really suffered in these 15 years. Florida really has become almost the beacon to the country for what faith, freedom, and family look like. And COVID really highlighted that, I think.
Yeah.
But how embarrassing for Texas that Florida has led the way on so many issues.
I was with a state senator.
Texas should be leading.
I was with a state senator from Florida in Israel last week, who leads the charge on conservative policies. And it was so funny. He was talking to me. He's like, what is going on in Texas? I busted out laughing. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you guys had the most drama-filled session I've ever seen. He carries a lot of legislation from initiatives from Governor Ron DeSantis, who's an amazing governor, obviously. And I was just kind of laughing. And I'm like, well, where do you want me to start? And he started going, why do you guys, like, what's this I hear about the speaker's race? He could not fathom. This is a state senator in Florida, could not fathom the idea of making a deal with the Democrats to maintain a speakership power. He was like, well, that's just a Democrat. And I'm like, well, no, yes. Yeah, that's correct.
Exactly.
And it was so alarming to hear that Texas, and I really believe God has a plan for Texas. I believe Texas is called to be a forefront, which is why there's a spiritual attack on us in this way. We're watching a power-hungry man go after this. And here was one of the lies I didn't mention. He sent out, I don't know if it was a text or an email, but a picture of him and Governor Greg Abbott, which was like a quasi endorsement from Governor Greg Abbott. It's what he was trying to display of his speaker's race. Well, obviously, the governor has not weighed in on the speaker's race. And so I just love it. The governor spoke out and was like, I have not endorsed Dustin Burrows. Now, granted, he didn't say he was endorsing David Cook, but he said, I want you to follow the GOP caucus bylaws, which means David Cook. And, we've got Dan Patrick, our incredible lieutenant governor, who oversees our incredibly conservative chamber of the Texas Senate, who has now spoken out and said, hey, look, I want you to follow the Texas GOP caucus bylaws, which means David Cook. And we've got, Ken Paxton has spoken out about this process. And so the wind is at our back. Like we have the momentum. But the reason I was saying that, the numbers are important. We went from 3 that were willing to oppose Dade Phelan on the floor to now 62 that are willing to oppose the opposition or the elite, the
uniparty.
The uniparty is a great term. Yeah, and the Democrats inside the Texas House. What a leap in 2 years, 3 to 62. The reason that matters is we must capitalize on it at this point. What would your message be to those state reps that, they have built a career off of getting their work done in the Texas House? They haven't bucked leadership. They've kind of gone with the flow. They're not bad people. They're just they weren't built for war. Yeah. As I like to say, and they don't enjoy the war. They're just like, man, I'm here to serve. I'm here to serve my community. What would you say to those?
That's easy.
Who are feeling the pressure right now?
Yeah. Ask your constituents, the people who vote for you every 2 years. Would you prefer I vote for the candidate that the Republican caucus has chosen, or would you prefer I vote for the candidate who the Democrats are supporting?
That's good.
And I bet you 99% of the people that they talk to who are their Republican constituents will say, no, we want you to go with the caucus choice. I mean, that's just common sense. But, a lot of people don't listen to their constituents.
Yeah.
So they're more concerned about the power for themselves.
Yeah. Well, and I think, and that's so funny, right? Like, why run? Why waste your time? It's not like being in the Texas legislature is one of the greatest honors of my life. So don't get me wrong on that. I mean, it's truly an honor to serve the people of Texas. Unbelievable. I'm overwhelmed at my reelection. I'm overwhelmed every time someone casts a vote for me and says that they voted for me. I'm like, wow, that's just, it is overwhelming, the honor to be able to serve. But we're not in it for the money, and we're not in it for the notoriety. You're in state politics. You're not even on the federal level where, your name's on Fox News all the time. It's not about that. It's about service. And so the idea of ignoring the people who you're serving to be in this position is bizarre to me. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And yet that's what we're seeing. I want to wrap this up and really kind of the point, and I'll go through kind of the policies I'm most concerned about failing under the leadership of Dustin Burrows, because here's what the uniparty does. They will give you just enough red meat, and typically it's watered down red meat that doesn't actually have teeth in it to amplify. I'll give you an example. When we banned DEI in universities, we didn't really ban DEI in universities. And what I mean by that is what we said in the bill was you cannot have a DEI officer paid on your university staff with these funds. Okay. And well, that's great. Let's rename it. Let's take it to a different part of here. And oh, by the way, in the bill, the Democrats crafted up a handy amendment that says we're going to give lifelong tenure to DEI officers inside of Texas public universities. For the record, no other educator gets that benefit. And we want to take the social Marxists that are poisoning the minds of our youth and make sure that they have lifelong tenure. I was this close to writing an amendment of saying, just adding the words "in Oklahoma." Like, where it would just be, you get lifelong tenure in Oklahoma, And
you'd think these universities would be smarter. I've actually uncovered some stuff that some of these universities are doing, and had conversations, and so I've thought a little bit about this, and it just strikes me as like they're literally shooting themselves in the foot, because if you think about the kind of student you want to attract to your university, the people who subscribe to the DEI, they're victims, right? They see themselves as a victim. They're going to see themselves as victims the rest of their life.
Yes.
Victims are never going to be successful people.
No.
Which means they're never going to become donors.
Right.
So your future donors are your students.
Yes.
But if you are attracting and educating a bunch of future victims, these people are never going to give money to your university.
No.
Right? So they're even attracting the wrong kind of people. And I don't think they've thought long term what this actually means.
No, I agree with you. And, on that note, we're talking about this is the type of regime that's overseeing the Texas House right now under Dade Phelan's leadership. Top Cardinal, Dustin Burrows, right there. It's who they're putting in that position of power. We must defeat this. We need a few more Republicans to come over onto the team. I believe there's a few different tactics. If you're a grassroots conservative right now, I want to encourage you, reach out to your state rep and ask them who they're voting for. And by the way, if they won't answer you, that's a problem, because we serve the people, and this should be public knowledge. This should be something that we amplify and promote. The takeaways, though, that I think are so vitally important is talking about right now, we have 62 Republicans out of 88 that are supporting David Cook. We have more Democrats than Republicans supporting Dustin Burrows. This is a Republican versus Democrat vote coming down the pipeline. And what's at stake is every one of our Texas GOP priorities, eliminating property taxes. On the spiritual side, we're looking at making sure that we keep pro-life as a strong proponent inside of the Texas legislature. If you're making a deal with the Democrats, don't you believe? They're going to come in with their women's reproductive rights nonsense bullcrap talk and start to try and make exceptions for murdering the unborn. That's going to be one of the, was that the deal, Dustin? Or maybe was it school choice as our kids are being indoctrinated, taught to hate America, taught to despise the forefathers that created the greatest nation in the history of the world, taught to despise the Judeo-Christian values that we carry every single day.
Oh, but they're being shown gay porn books in elementary school libraries.
Absolutely.
That's fine.
And it's not even considered lewd. It's considered education. And so is that going to be is school choice going to go to where our kids can't have an out, where parents' money is not going to follow the student, but it's going to go to the woke education system? Is that it? Is that the deal that Dustin made? We don't know. We know that he's going to continue to empower social Marxists to be committee chairman that are going to kill conservative legislation. And then the other thing is he's going to keep a parliamentarian that's not going to give a fair shake to conservatives, but is going to kill conservative legislation off of points of order. Is that going to be the deal that keeps him in power? Here's the bottom line. We have Dustin Burrows and we have David Cook. David Cook is beholden to the votes he's earned of Republicans. Dustin Burrows is beholden to maintain power by pleasing the Democrats. So we know that every decision that Dustin Burrows makes this next session is going to be based on maintaining power. And his base of maintaining power are leftists. And then we have David Cook, who is rising to power in the right way, only to reform the Texas House, signed off on all 12 points of the contract with Texas, and making sure that he is only beholden to Republican support. So last words, what can you say about the future of Texas, how you feel about this next session, and really, when you're talking to members, or really just the grassroots overall, what can they do right now in order to make sure that their voices are heard in the speaker's race?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super optimistic.
Yeah.
I think we've sort of, this year was really an inflection point in history, and there's just so much opportunity. And it just looks like things are shaping up the right way. And so even here, I say that national politics, of course, with Donald Trump and the people he's bringing into that administration, but even here in Texas. And I think that if you just ask people to get involved, call their state rep, let their voices be heard. There is a and thank God for Elon Musk here in Texas, because he's he has allowed us and given us a platform where we can actually hold people accountable and enjoy our free speech and really speak truth to power, which we weren't really allowed to do in 2020, if you remember. And so I just think that even here in Texas, we really have the opportunity to apply pressure to these elected officials who, some of them are leftists. Some of them are these like squishy middle people, but we can influence them with power. A strong, unified voice of grassroots people all screaming the same thing. We can make it happen.
100% we can.
And so that's my encouragement to people who are listening. Get involved. Call your elected representatives, and let's make sure that we elect the right person who is going to honor the rules of the Republican Party and support our platform and actually push the agenda that the Republican grassroots have demanded for years now.
100%.
So it's time. It's time. This is our year.
And I'm looking at your letter right now. I'll end it with this because I think it's important to note the letter that you wrote has had such an amazing impact. And I think looking at the different members of people who watch this and watch what we're doing, I think it's important to remember that every person plays a part in this, whether they're an elected official or not. But I also want to end with the words of Donald Trump Jr., and that's what I was trying to find right here. This is what Donald Trump Jr. said about this race. And I think it's amazing that the son of the president, who I believe Donald Trump Jr. could be a future presidential candidate himself. I mean, what an amazing leader, an amazing father. Donald Trump Jr. I believe he's an incredible man. But he said this about the speaker's race. And I think to end on this is really important because this is a man who has been in the fight for the nation with his father, and someone who, for a lack of better terms or lack of better wording, he doesn't really have time to get into the minute details of the Texas House. And yet he felt it was important enough to weigh in on this issue. Yeah. And he tweeted out, "It's unbelievable what is happening in Texas right now." He said there's a group of so-called Republicans cutting a deal with liberal Democrats to elect a speaker instead of uniting behind the Republican nominee, David Cook. Unbelievable Republicans have a mandate. Unbelievable Republicans have a mandate. You've answered that mandate. I believe I've answered that mandate and still am. And now it's up to the Texas House to answer that mandate. And here's why. I believe that, as we said earlier, as goes Texas, goes the nation, which means right here, we are on the forefront of the battle. If you are a pastor, this is the time to pray and fast. If you are a Texan, this is the time to call your elected representative and demand. By the way, they work for you. I work for the people of Texas. You work for the county of Texas. This is something that we go all in on. And we simply say, call your elected representative and demand it. Demand that we are going to see change. By the way, January 11th, we'll be at the Capitol doing a prayer night for this very thing. And so January 11th, get to the Texas State Capitol where we're going to pray, we're going to intercede, and we're going to believe that righteousness is going to prevail. We've grown from 3 to 62 that are taking a stand in Texas. And hear me, if David Cook does not win, and if Dustin Burrows were to prevail, this session will be a declaration of war. Because I believe that when people stand up and do the right thing, the future is always bright. But if we give in, then this uniparty continues to expand and grow. Bo, thank you so much for being with us today. It's amazing.
My pleasure. It's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, thanks for watching the For Liberty and Justice podcast, where we seek to mobilize the church, wake up the city, and take a stand for liberty and justice. Share this with someone. Get out and let's get the real conservative person that's willing to fight for us elected to the Texas House Speaker's role. Because listen, as so goes Texas, so goes the future of America. This is vitally important. Make your voices heard, that on January 14th, when we swear in, we get the right person that's going to uphold our values as Speaker of the Texas House. We'll see you next time.